In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the Paranormal Hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time. It is time for Ghost to Ghost. Tonight, our topic is paranormal versus parapsychology. What's the difference? Tonight, our co-hosts are Heather Lawson, our case manager on Spirit and podcast director.
Hello.
And Eric Kerr, our research assistant on Spirit.
Hello.
Guys, tonight we're going to take a look at paranormal versus parapsychology. A lot of people have in the past used these terms interchangeably, and there is a big difference. I think some people don't know. I think there's some people who don't understand, and there's people who just don't give a shit and they just use them any way they want. So, when you ask what the difference is, there's a whole lot. We look at, well, at least our group, Spirit looks at the point of investigating as a scientific endeavor. So, first of all, let's start with paranormal. The word itself is an umbrella term that covers a lot of things. It covers cryptozoology, ufology, psychic ability, ESP, telekinesis, palm reading, and the guy down the corner selling snake oil. So anyway, it's a catch-all phrase. It can delve into supernatural, metaphysical, transcendental, mystical, you name it, otherworldly, again, everything and anything. It's just a catch-all term that covers anything that is not normal. Paranormal means things that don't fall in the normal category. So when I started researching this, a couple things that came to mind, and I thought, I'm going to look this up in some dictionaries. Let's see what they've got to say. The worst one of the bunch was the digital dictionary. And get this, it makes us all sound like we have a mental problem. Paranormal means something is unusual or unnatural and can't be explained by what's known about the world and nature. People who experience paranormal events often believe they have magical, supernatural, or folkloric origins. And I guess in a way, when you read that, it's not necessarily meant to be offensive, but it could be taken that way. A lot of people go, hey, what do you mean? Does that mean if I seen a ghost, I believe I'm magical? I think what it's saying is that it believes that the origin of what you see is magical.
It's worded weird.
Oh, yes. And the way it comes off, it could piss people off. It isn't read right, Out of curiosity, now, you both came on the team, and Spirit team, that is. And, we talked about this a little bit. Eric, what was your first thoughts on that? Was that something that you never really thought about, the difference between paranormal and parapsychology?
I honestly wouldn't have known the difference. If you had asked me about the two terms, I probably couldn't have told you.
Well, that's fair. A lot of people don't know. They look at, I learned this a long time ago. Before me and Heather got married in the dating world, when someone asks you what you did for a hobby, you either lied or you said, I do parapsychology. If they were really into ghosts and the paranormal shows, it's like, oh, really? That's so... They knew what it was. Everybody else would think of some form of psychology. Well, that's really neat. And they move on because they had no clue what it was. You get out. I've done that numerous times, and people don't know what it is. And, I've even, sat there and wondered how long it was going to be before someone either Googled it or asked me about it. And, it's just kind of funny because people have...
I wonder how many went back and Googled it afterwards.
Well, I know a lot of people did.
After talking to you, and they're like,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And then didn't talk to you again when they saw you next.
we were at a Masonic event, and I never will forget it. And a brother came up to me. I've never met this brother ever, and he acted like I was some sort of celebrity. He said, "Yeah, I've read about you and everything else." And I'm thinking, where the hell, bathroom wall? I mean, where the hell is that at? I'm wondering. And this guy is just back and forth. And he says, "What do you do for hobby?" He says, "I know you used to golf." And I said, "Well, yeah, I used to. I had some health issues. I haven't got back to it." And he said, I said, "I do parapsychology." He goes, "That is so neat. That is great." He walked off, and Kevin, my captain, goes, "He doesn't know what that is, does he?" I said, "Oh, he has no clue." And you could see him over his phone in the corner. It wasn't 5 minutes, and he's kind of staring at me from the corner. It's like, holy shit. I looked that up, and he even came over later and said, "You did say parapsychology, didn't you?" I said, "Yes." I said, you probably didn't spell it right when you Googled it. It takes a little bit. I said, no, that's what I said. I said, "We hunt ghosts." And it was kind of funny because after he thought about it a while, he thought it was even cooler. But, it's true, though. We do more parapsychology than paranormal. And I think when we got looking at the word paranormal, that's when, I didn't realize. Because people use, and we do too, I mean, they use it interchangeably. They'll say, "Well, we're a paranormal investigation group." Okay, so found Bigfoot lately? Oh, we don't do that. Okay, well, then you're really not, you're not really a paranormal group. You're a ghost hunting group. And there is a category, and if you look in some of the dictionaries, and actually, Wikipedia is my next go-through. I figured, what the hell, let's see what they've got to say. They're usually interesting. And they weigh in the fact that the article is about unexplained phenomena. The phenomena, not subject to the laws of nature, are supernatural. For unexplained, but presumed natural phenomena, paranormal events are purported phenomena described in popular culture, folk, and other, I gotta turn my page on my script, folks, okay, and other non-scientific bodies of knowledge whose existence within these contexts is described as being beyond the scope of normal scientific understanding. Notably, paranormal beliefs include those that pertain to extrasensory perception, for example, telepathy, spiritualism, and pseudosciences of ghost hunting, cryptozoology, and ufology. Now, I have to laugh a little bit because it's almost kind of like the old military saying, if you can't, wow them with wisdom, baffle them with bullshit. They put enough in here that you get lost halfway through it. But the last is really probably sums it up. The fact that anything that is not natural is unnatural or paranormal, or, in this case, they even use the term supernatural, but they do outline it much better. And they do use the word pseudoscience. Well, there's a lot of things that are pseudo. And I mean, again, yeah, I've been called worse. Pseudoscience is not horrible. I will say it was more lengthy, so they tried to make up for everything and buff it and tone it down so that it had a little better meaning and still didn't offend. So my last stop was Merriam-Webster dictionary, the original Webster. I figured we'll go back to the old ways. Paranormal, not scientifically explainable. Supernatural, that was it. And I thought, damn, now there you go. The short, sweet, and to the point, And they didn't want to piss anybody off, so they didn't take any sides. They just left it very open. The last stop was the Cambridge Dictionary. I figured, we'll see what our scholars came up with. Paranormal, impossible to explain by unknown natural forces or by science. There's another good one. I mean, that really does. That puts it out there in the perspective. Now, is parapsychology a part of paranormal? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah, has to be. Ghost hunting and parapsychology are all part of the big umbrella term paranormal because it covers everything. So we can say that when someone says they are a paranormal investigator and they investigate all these things, right? Not really. They really don't. A lot of people that use the term use it as a slang term, catch-all term. We have a paranormal group. Okay. So how many of them come from UFOs? I mean, you have to, if you think about it, in all honesty, and, people say, well, you're splitting hairs. You're being too particular. My theory is if you want the science field to take you seriously, you need to act professional, and you need to know your wording.
So when I talk to people and tell them what I do, the perception is their eyes get very wide, and they're like, "You hunt ghosts." And although that's true, that's not really all that we do. That's what the TV has shown them to do.
No, but that's the easiest way to explain it. You know,
Yes.
if someone asks you, you say, well, yeah. I usually will lead with the parapsychology, and when they look confused, I go, I hunt ghosts.
Right.
And then see what their face does, you know.
And one of the things that I definitely want to bring out is I've learned a lot of patience by doing this, because if you watch on TV, something happens every 5 seconds. It's not like that. And I tell people my life is not a big game of Pokemon Go.
Oh, no.
It's not like that. I'm not collecting
you know how many
ghosts.
hours they had to go through to get those every 5 seconds?
So many.
And the bad thing is, a lot of the TV are good for them, bad for viewers. The TV shows have a crew and a semi-trailer that have desk and equipment set up. So when they come out, they hand a recorder to them. In the next hour, they have gone through everything in that recorder. And the sound guy, his stuff comes down immediately. And before they ever, they've got some response right there on the spot. I noticed that with a lot of large groups. And people don't understand, because they see the intros where they're coming in a couple of vehicles, a van, whatever, and they ride. What they don't show them is the 3 semis, the motorhome, the other 2,
everybody else.
Campers being pulled by cars and everything else. Yeah, it's a horrific amount of people. And I remember when
The whole town knows.
It's an entourage.
it's an entourage. Yeah,
Yes.
You definitely have a posse. I remember, I won't say what group it is, but when they were doing the Salem witch trials and they were investigating, the town of Salem had a fit. They go, you've got more convoys than Elvis when he appeared in person. You need to park some of this stuff somewhere off the street. You cannot have it. Having a permit to investigate here does not give you the right to block traffic.
And some of those streets can't handle that.
No, they're very narrow.
They're narrow,
Well,
old, and
also,
cobblestone.
Yeah, it's like a lot of them are still cobblestone.
Well, I'll
can't
tell
handle
you,
the weight.
from
Yes.
a fire chief, a retired fire chief's principle. I remember one time we bought an aerial down here that came from Chicago. Chicago has a lot of streets that way. And it was very tall, very narrow, and not very wide, because they had to make the turns. And we all thought, geez, oh Pete, this center of gravity's too high. This thing will topple. Well, you have to drive them a little different, obviously. But there, they have some streets, because they're still cobblestone, that can't support the weight of a tanker or an engine with 500 gallons of water. They have to be careful how they come in, and certainly those streets require special equipment. That's why when you're an industrial fire chief, your engines, or the inside engines, are half the size. It's very much like you have at an airport for aircraft. They have to be able to get places they need. So, but that's the funny thing about it. The term ghost hunting has become more accepted. I like it. I think it's better than saying we're a paranormal investigator, because that really tells me that you have not really studied enough, and all your training involves, ghost adventure reruns, and it worries me a bit. When a team comes up and I'll be honest. If they come up and go, we're ghost hunters, okay, that's a fair assessment. Now, it's not the scientific version as, hey, we're trying to prove that post-life, existence happens, and okay. And that's fine, because most of the people you want to deal with, that will turn them off if you get too above their head. I think it's a good way of saying it. We're ghost hunters. And 2, I think people get that right image. You don't get these weird... Some people will always think you're weird. And, for instance, I have an individual I always considered kind of a stepmother, and she was real nice. Her and her husband's passed. He was a good brother in the lodge, and he was kind of like another stepfather for me. A really good guy. They had a home in Florida, and it's fun watching.
Lady.
Oh yeah. You got to love it, because they live on this little place called Pine Island. If I was ever going to buy a house, I want one there, because they all live in a vacuum of 1950, 1960. They all start drinking in the morning. They drink all day long. Most of these people will never have to be embalmed. It could be dangerous, actually. They're pretty well picked. But I swear to God, one guy, Russ, and he's gone now, and he's a great guy. He was kind of funny to be around, but he would show up in the morning, and he'd have they all have Tervis tumblers. And he had this tumbler, and I had kind of a dark color liquid. And I go, what's in there, Russ? He smiles real big and goes, tea. And you knew damn well it was black velvet. And he'd start in the morning. It's like Mom told me, you can't drink all day unless you start in the morning. And, it's a great place to be. But, there was a couple, and they had this, it was really neat how they had this thing worked out. There's about 8 or 10 couples, and they would all come down there. None of them lived there permanently. They were all snowbirds. When they get down there, they'd have, every night at 5 o'clock, they'd have a 5 o'clock somewhere party. And it would be a meal, okay? And whoever hosted it would put on the majority, and you could bring pitch in. But I love the way Pep said it. He goes, I figured this out. It's great on groceries. All I gotta do is I host them one day a week, and we gotta fix meals on Sunday. He says the other 5 days we eat somebody else's house. Cuts groceries out like mad. He says just like a traveling buffet. You just bring your silverware. And I thought, oh my God, have fork will travel. Yeah, oh my God, it was great. And that's what they did. They went place to place. But one night we were having one of the couples over, and this guy was really nice. John was his name, and I don't remember his wife's name. They'd taken us out crabbing. We brought in crabs, and we had a big crab boil with all the, the rock crabs and blue crabs we'd gotten. And something was said, and anyway, I brought it up that I do paranormal parapsychology work. And she kind of goes, well, what part of psychology is that? And I said, it's the dark cousin side of psychology. And that was actually phrased by Sigmund Freud. He called parapsychology the dark side. It was long before Star Wars ever came out. And she went ape. She goes, oh, my God. Once she figured out what it was, she goes, I can't be around you. That's the devil's work. And they were very religious, apparently. And their religion, in her mind, said, hey, what I do is evil. And they got up and left. And they would refuse to come around when I was down there because of that. And of course, my stepmother's theory is, oh, screw them. We didn't really like them anyway.
It's called denial, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's denial. And I mean, so depending on how and who you say it to, it can have a large impact. It really can. And I find this, and I guess there isn't a 6-month period don't go by that we are out somewhere and see the back of a car and someone's made a vinyl sticker that says Ghost Seekers or Ghost Lookers or we're the Ghost Team, and somebody's formed this out of their garage. And the first question I've always asked them is, what kind of training do you have? And that's the one that usually gets them. That's a trick question. Because people will guess.
Training?
Yeah.
They're amateur ghost hunters.
That's right. They and the problem you get with amateurs are, and I hate to use that phrase because sometimes it's thought of as very negative impacting, but the thing is, you don't know what they may do. They've not been doing it long enough. And so if they get in a dark room and you've got antiques in there and someone turns one over, it's worth $500-$600 or heaven forbid, $30,000 or $40,000. They don't have the money to replace that. They've all pitched in together. Now, at the same time, people ask me, well, what is your training exactly? Well, it's a lot better.
Here we go.
We started in the living room, not the garage. Anyway, but we all started the same way. We did what they call observant participant. We're going to talk about methodology here in a few minutes, but we did the participant observer.
Hours. That's what
hours and hours of being immersed in the subject, and it makes a difference. Someone asked me, he said, "How long have you been doing this?" And I said, "Investigating or interest in parapsychology." I said, because, I've been investigating for 30 plus years. Interest in parapsychology goes back to when I was 8, 9 years old. I mean, how far you want to go with this. So, I've got a chance to see paranormal TV develop along the line. That's one of the nice things about being old is you get to see things as they develop. And, I get a lot of people say, well, where do you get your training at? Well, we've talked about this on previous episodes. We go to we go to conventions, paracons, and we try to take classes by people that are also trained in the same way. They've got a lot of experience. We were just at a paracon, and what class were we in together? Was it Amy's?
Yes,
Amy Burney from Kindred Souls, or Spirits. I'm sorry, Kindred Spirits. We get different classes, and these people share their experiences and their techniques and their expertise, and that's how we pick that up. So when you look at a group, and one thing I do admire about them, I can see this enthusiasm in their eyes. And, they haven't been blinded by problems yet, and that really makes a difference, Blind, obvious, whatever you want to call it, it still is what it is, but they're enthusiastic,
Yes.
All right, so...
Chief, I just wanted to go back really quickly and just address the fact I grew up in Florida, and that problem was not unique to Pine Island.
Really?
I think a lot of the skepticism actually involves day drinking.
Yeah.
And I'm from Ocala, Florida originally. I've seen
Well, I know
my fair
Ocala's
share of it.
at,
Yeah,
no
there's a
kidding.
lot of that
That's
going around.
quite a ways inland. So I just kind of wonder, because I know a lot of people retired to Bonita Springs. There's people that go down to Panama.
Yes.
And, I always wonder how many more communities there are like this.
Spirits are quite an interesting mix.
Yeah. I got to tell you, first time I saw it, being a Shriner, first thing I thought was, I've died and went to heaven. This is great. Because everybody go in, they go, help yourself to the bar.
Right.
And, I thought I had a good bar back then, my God, and they go, well, and I remember one time my stepmother asked me, she says, we poured liquor into canisters, and they're decanters, and she says, it's been about a year ago, and we're not sure which is which. Can you tell us something? And, oh, God, I'm now recognized as an expert in alcohol. So either I'm now a mixologist or a
now
drunk.
Now you're the sniffer.
Yeah. So I went in there and just started sampling a little bit. Oh, this is vodka and this. And then she was hanging little signs on them. Yeah, I thought it was funny. But, yeah, so once they figured that out, a couple other couples go, we did the same thing. Can you stop by our place? And, it's kind of funny. So I got to be, the local, I called it tester. It sounded better than drunk.
You are the expert in all things spirits.
Did they carry you home, or did you?
No, but boy, we've had some good times, and I'll never forget. I don't drink beer, and a lot of people, I don't know where they know this or not. I always jokingly say that's for amateurs. I drink scotch. I've got a glass of scotch I'm sipping right now, and I'll tell you, we would go to places sometimes, and one of the guys that didn't know me very well would say, "Hey, you want a beer?" I go, "I'm going to pass on that." He says, "Not a drinker, huh?" I said, "Oh no, I'm a drinker, just not beer." And he looked at me and goes, "Well, what do you drink?" And I go, well, take one even better. Went to a Shrine Women's Association party, and at the time I was married to a gal was in it, and everybody's got beer, and I'm thinking, God, I can't swallow this swill. And all of a sudden, and she's gone now. She's sweetest lady in the world. Her husband had been part of the 101st Airborne in the invasion of Normandy. I spent a lot of time talking to him. Fantastic guy. And she goes, well, we have a closet with the hard liquor, and if you'd like to get into that. And I open this door up, and it's like opening the door to Willy Wonka's factory. I mean,
the golden ticket.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm looking there, and she goes, can't find anything? I said, oh, no, I'm good. I just taken it all in, and oh, my God. But no, I think everyone goes through that, but I thought, my God, this is the place. I know why people retire here now.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the heat or lack of snow. Shit, they drink all day. It's paradise.
And liquor is taxed less in the state of Florida as well.
Yes.
So why not stock up?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and then you sweat it out and drink some more.
I remember,
absolutely.
One of my favorite drinks is, and I have to be careful being diabetic, I only have one or two of those a week, is a Rusty Nail. It's half Drambuie, half Scotch. And we went down to one of the liquor stores, because the stores are separate in Florida. And I got down there, and the Drambuie was almost $10 cheaper than what it was here. And I forget, my stepfather goes, yeah, if you get in a spot, let me know. I'll FedEx some of that up to you, And I'm thinking, well, for $10, you're out that with a FedEx. But I mean, oh my God, yeah, so I'm down there buying as quick as I can, So, well, anyway, I'll tell you, that's the neat thing about things. When you get into parapsychology, most people are going to look at it and they'll either go, oh, he's a little weird, or they'll go, that's really cool. But you get those extremes every once in a while that go, they're evil. This is, demonic. And I find this, and I don't want to insult any religion, but I find this mostly in Southern Baptist more than I do anywhere else.
Pentecostals.
Yeah, Church of God. They tend to be that way. I grew up in Church of Christ, not Latter-day Saints, not Mormons, but just regular Church of Christ. And I remember I met a couple people that, had been converted from Lutheran, and they said, oh, yes, the Lutherans don't like Freemasons, but they're not against drinking a lot. And, the old standing joke that, the difference between Catholics and Baptists are the Catholics recognize each other in the liquor store, and the Baptists pretend they don't know who they are. And,
it's a true story.
Yeah,
I
believe
that.
I believe that. And I think it's the same way with parapsychology, or paranormal. People, and I associate, I got good friends in the cryptozoology end, shout out to Russ, wherever he's at today. And, and the guys from Monster Hunters, they're good guys. They are really solid people. And, of course, they don't do what I do. And, we always talked about that because they said, well, I wouldn't want to deal with ghosts because you can't do anything to them. At least with a creature, I can shoot. And I said, well, it's kind of like that scene in episode 4 of Star Wars where R2-D2 is playing chess with a Wookiee, and Han Solo goes, yeah, but when the Wookiee loses, he pulls out limbs. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is the same thing. Ghosts don't generally bust down the front door and pull you apart. So everybody has a different view of what they do, but. And reeling us back in, the thing about parapsychology, I think, is that differs, and this is when we start getting into a little difference. So, we the term ghost hunters, I think, is a good term. It's much better than paranormal investigator. It's better than a paranormal group, although it's a bit more crash, I think, in some terms. But anyway, and I think that they need to reach out and read. I mean, anybody that sees my library, and we were just talking about this, we're still unpacking it in our new digs. And I started reading Hosler books when I was in junior high. I mean, is that necessarily all the training? No, but I think it's a good start. If you can't afford to go to a Paracon, there's none near you, and there's no way of getting that, then pick up books. Books are great. All these guys have written books.
Yes.
Mine's going to be coming out next year, so I mean, we'll be promoting that very hard on this show as that gets closer. But because Chief needs
Everywhere
the money.
we
So
go.
anyway, yeah. Everywhere you go, I go to a restaurant and go, hey, I wrote a book. You interested in a copy? Anyway, yeah.
I also just want to add something
Sure.
about it's basically the new wave of the paranormal. The authors that are writing these books as the subject matter
Yes.
experts are so accessible on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Because they want to sell books.
Yeah.
And we know several authors, and they respond. They talk with people, they answer questions. So if you have curiosity, now is really a good time to learn more about it. They're more accessible than ever.
Well, and we do we do a lecture workshop series around Indiana. We go a lot of places, and we just recently were at Alexandria, Indiana. Before that, we were at Spencer, and we go to libraries and museums and talk. And one of the funniest things, I remember we were up at the Paracon 2 years ago, and I talked to Jeff Ballinger. I said, hey, we in the third year before that, he had put on a program, a free lecture, and it was regarding Christmas ghosts and other denizens. Well, it belonged to the book that he published. He published a wonderful book, and that was kind of the prelude to selling it. And I told him the next year, I said, hey, we're doing a program. We go around, we present this, and we present it that it's, we certainly cite that it comes out of your work. He goes, I think that's great. He says, do you need an address where they can buy the book? And I mean, so that makes them, it's all about book sales. And I mean, and honestly, I get that, I do. And Jeff's a great guy, and I'm not making fun of him at all. But I mean,
I wonder how I'm going to get a calendar this next year.
Yeah, because the Michigan Paracon shut down. It was our last year to go. We'd gone for years, and I think 6-7 years, something like that. It's been in existence, I think, for 12 or 13. No,
that was number 14.
14, yeah, it was 14, wasn't it? Because 13 was last year. So we've gone to half of them, and I tell you what, I miss it already. We're starting to look for another spot to go. But I'll tell you what, it gave you a chance to meet up with these guys, and I'll never forget it. And I think the big part of that is having those relationships. Is when Dustin Perry came up here, I think it was March, April, and we helped with his appearance at the Old National Theater, which is actually the Mirah Theater. I don't care what they say. Anyway, but yeah, so we got in there, and as soon as the show starts, one of the first things he does, he looks through the crowd, he looks at us, he points at me, and he goes, I know you.
Yes.
He said, he knew us. He knew, if we needed something, we could get to him. Same as we could Dave Schrader, Greg Lawson, all these people we can reach out to. They're accessible, like you said. And I think it's a good time. I mean, people have a chance, and you shouldn't just access them to ask them a dumb question that you could find in a book, but certainly start looking that direction. That makes a difference. Books, pick them up, start studying. So, okay, let's parapsychology. We got a little bit off track, but we've enjoyed ourselves.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's all that really matters.
Right.
We've drank more. So anyway,
yeah.
When we talk about parapsychology, it's a study of alleged. Now this. And I tell people the way I like to think of this when I describe it to other parapsychology or other ghost hunters is it's like looking at a EMF meter compared to a K2. An EMF meter will measure any of the open field from point 1 to the other end of the scale of EMF, but K2 only hits about a 12-point area within that EMF field that's specifically known to be the area that parapsychology happens. So it's a much narrower, and that's the way that parapsychology is to paranormal. It's a much narrower area of expertise. So parapsychology deals with psychic phenomena such as extrasensory perception, telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, and telekinesis, which is kind of interchangeable, psychometry, paranormal claims, and near-death experiences, apparitional experiences. And again, it's still considered a pseudoscience, but there's a lot more of them out there now. It's like I tell people, Jeff Meldrum really made the field of cryptozoology more sophisticated because he is a professor. And when he stepped out and said, hey, I think these things exist, it makes a difference. And I think the same thing with parapsychology when it came into main. And this is not something that just rolled out in the last 10, 20 years. It's been around a while. Really, the first time they recognized parapsychology is in 1882 with the Society for Psychical Research, which SPR, Psychical Research. And, this is a big, very prestigious, English society. We're talking about big names in it, such as Harry Price, one of the first ghost hunters. Nandor Fodor, again, another ghost hunter. He actually worked with Sigmund Freud. Lloyd Riley, Henry Cedric, J.B. Ryan. These were all guys that helped start the SPR. Now, there was some journals that come out, and a lot of times parapsychology research rarely appears in mainstream journals, such as scientific journals. There's a few niche journals that publish most papers about parapsychology. Here's another source you can look at. Now, Fate Magazine. I think this is one of the oldest magazines out there, written in Fortran times. And, the problem with those are, and I love it, I used to have Fate Magazine. I
used to have a subscription.
Yeah, I did too. I had one that lasted, it was back in the 80s. The problem, and I still have those magazines. I thought about getting them out where people can see them. But the problem you run into is they're kind of like the National Enquirer. They tend to publish anything they get, and they don't have a lot of guidelines. Now, the Journal of Near-Death Studies and Journal of Parapsychology, those are a little different. Those have to have facts. They are scientific journals. They are not just straight publications. And the Skeptical Inquirer, you can only get that in the UK. They will not ship it outside the country. I got to see a few of them. I think I got 2 of them I brought back last time I was in England. The last one is Taps Para Magazine, and this has a story all its own. This was made by TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, back in the 90s and the early 2000s. This was a cash cow for them. They made a ton of money. And I remember I wanted these, but they were expensive. I think a 6-month run was like $100. It was like $200 some for a membership or a subscription. And sounds like the cat's down here, doesn't it? Yeah,
I think I heard that too.
Yeah, I know what it is. Okay, so TAPS Paranormal Magazine is no longer in existence. It's not being published. There are back issues, and they don't sell cheap, folks. I hate to see it because, honestly, it was one of the better magazines. Was it a scientific journal? I don't know. It may kind of be borderline there, but it was certainly better than Fate or Fortune Times because it was authentic. It was from proof that they had gathered and people they'd interviewed. It was a lot better off. But those are the ones that are out there.
It probably gave insights into the investigations that you didn't see on TV.
Oh, yes, most certainly. So, okay, so the Society for Psychical Research, SPR, I tried to join that once, way back when. And, it was interesting for them to see a Yank wanting to belong.
No Americans allowed, huh?
Well, no, but I don't think anybody ever tried that before. And they kind of, why don't you spend some more time in the field and get back with us? But I did find out, and they were quick to tell me, there's also an American version of that. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But before we get off SPR, we talked about some of the big names. Another one was Eleanor Mildred Sedgwick. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
Doesn't ring a bell to me.
Yeah, come out of orientation. When we orientate our members, we talk about this. But one thing we talk about is the attachment
It's been
theory.
a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, we slept since then.
Yeah.
It's about the attachment theory. She came up with the theory that inanimate objects sometimes can hold attachments of spirits, and that they can basically, I hate to say, they infest sounds like a damn cockroach. I hate to use that phrase, but they can be attached. Attached is a good word because it doesn't sound like it's negative. And so anyway, she discovered that inhabit, that's another good one right there. That's a good one. That was kind of what she is known for. Her husband was the first president of the SPR. And, she actually studied at Cambridge University. She was big into women's rights for education at the time. Now, we're talking 1930s. This is not when they were getting a lot of education, especially post-education. So
Chief, for the listeners out there, would that be something similar to Annabelle or Robert the Doll? Would it extend out to dolls?
Certainly that covers that. That's that theory.
Objects.
Yeah, they're objects. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that covers that. And I think that a lot of people, see, that's the thing. A lot of people, I always try to put this in my presentations because a lot of people don't realize, you take the Estes experiment, that came from an MIT experiment. And, they see it on Kindred Spirits or something like that, but they have no idea where they originated at. This came out of parapsychology. I mean, this is where this all came out. You start reading the books and, you start figuring out, wow, the American Society was formed, called American Society for Psychical Research, ASPR. It was done in 1885, became independent in 1906. It still exists to this day, although they don't answer the website. I've tried that a couple of times, so I don't know. Maybe they're declining. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is. If you're a member of that group, please let us know.
Are Brits allowed to join that group?
Well, that's why I wonder. Call MJ and tell her that, hey, we got a chance. We want to try. We want to do an experiment. Will you see if you can apply for that group?
Yeah.
And see if they tell you it's for Americans only.
Right.
What's the James Bond spoof? Where they have the American and then they have the British. God, what was the name of it?
You mean Spy versus Spy?
No. It's one that came out recently. It had the. God, I can't think of the name of it. The guy's name is Etsy, who stars in it, and he goes to a tailor's office, and the tailor's shop is actually the entrance to their headquarters.
Wait, are you talking about the Kingsman?
The Kingsman, that's it. Yeah, yes. The Kingsman, and then you have, I forget what the American version of that was called. And...
The League of Extraordinary.
No, that wasn't it. But
that was a good guess.
Yeah, that was a good guess. That was a good show as well. That's my favorite actor, Sean Connery. But oh my God, it was still good. Okay, so... let's talk a little bit about one thing that separates, we talked about all these terms and knowing who developed these experiments and all that as to, that all plays in the parapsychology. We can trace the roots to where all these, this is science. And, it makes a difference. Even though some people consider it a pseudoscience, to us it's a science. We talk a little bit about methodology. And this is one thing that is really, and there's four primary methodologies that are out there. There's actually 6 in total, what they teach when you go and do a parapsychology course. And yes, there are universities that do that. There's a few in the United States, a few more actually in England. But methodology is what you do and how you do it to do an investigation. The first one is anecdotal evidence. Now, the SPR started out with, and it was the first known method used. And what happens here is you read everything you can, okay, and you present that evidence and let the crowd or whoever you're presenting it to make the decision on what they think, whether it's a ghost or not. You give your evidence out, but you don't take a stance in it. You're neutral. A lot of TV shows started with this, okay? In Search of, My Ghost Story, I could sit here and name a ton of them. Basically, they presented a case, and you decided if there was anything there that was truthful or not. The next one is participant observer approach, and this is what SPR and I think the American version probably went to this day. And what basically it means is you immerse yourself into this field, you study everything you can find, you read everything you can find, and then you draw conclusions based on your years of experience. And that's what we do. Let's face it, what we really truly do, we say we do scientific debunking, and we do, but we also do the participant observer approach because we immerse ourselves in all the experience of all of our members that we draw together. So, that makes a difference. And the third one, rather, is scientific debunking approach. And what we do there is, that's truly the other side of what we do. We do an investigation. We go in and we use Arthur Conan Doyle's explanation of, once you've eliminated everything else, the only possibility is, it's paranormal. So what we do is we try to debunk and find natural causes for all the actual described occurrences and anomalies. Now, we also use a scientific methodology, or theorem. We go in, we listen to our client who tells us what has happened. We try to recreate that, and we develop a theorem off of that, and we work from there to try to get it to recreate, or we try to induce its recreation, and then we can make a synopsis from that. So, we still use the scientific methodology, but we also debunk. Before you can even do that, you need to get rid of everything that's natural. One of the big things that Jason and Grant and Taps did was they were plumbers. So they had a lot. Plumbing makes a lot of noise. We can tell you in our new broadcast room here, we found out right as I located it that the sewer line goes right overhead. So every turd going southbound goes right through here. And the bad thing is, if too many people are flushing at once, it gets on the air really quickly. So it is what it is. But plumbing makes a lot of noise. If pipes aren't in proper hangers and so forth, that water hammer. And being in the fire service, I can tell you all about water hammers, and that's it makes a big difference. I think once you've eliminated all the natural causes, then what's left, you can start using the scientific theorem to try to produce or, and see if you can document this. The last one is the medium approach. And some groups use this. They travel with a medium. I will give, certainly kindred spirits, Adam and Amy, I'll give them kudos because they do all the work first and then they try to verify it using a psychic. So you're not using a psychic as a guide. I think everybody... Eric, what was the first paranormal show you ever watched?
Oh, goodness. I mean, if you're going way, way back in the day, I did watch In Search of, which I'm showing my age now because that was Leonard Nimoy.
God, he was cool, wasn't he?
Yes. He was like literally the coolest. All the Star Trek
I have
guys
a picture framed for my man cave, and it has Leonard Nimoy leaning on a Riviera. It says, anybody can be cool, but it takes a lot to be Leonard Nimoy cool, leaning on a Riviera.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I got another one of Sinatra getting out of a helicopter holding a bourbon in his hand. I mean, oh my God, yeah.
I will say more modern. When I came into this field, I had obviously watched a lot of Ghost Adventures, and I think that's just was the most prevalent show on television and the topic.
Yeah.
So that's where my interest.
Sure.
Well, my interest actually started as I had experiences when I was younger, but the television version, that's where it started. But as I learned more about it, my tastes have changed.
Well, thank God. But anyway, I
have taste now.
Yeah, that's good. I'll tell you, when I do my lecture workshops at the different locations, I always ask that question. How many people, our first lecture is, let's talk ghosts. And the first thing I ask them, I said, how many people watch paranormal TV? And I get, X amount of hands. I go, okay, how many of you... or tell me which ghost story, and I go around, which one of these programs have you watched? I'd say 60% of it's Ghost Adventures. And I always go, they look at me and they go, we watch Ghost Adventures. I go, I'm so sorry. And I'll move to the next one, but I always come back and joke a little bit. Now, as we were talking about earlier, I will say this before everybody hates me automatically. Zach Bagans picks up some good, from time to time, picks up good evidence. What he does with it, I don't always approve of, and how he does it, I don't always approve. But I mean, certainly the evidence does come in, and his earlier investigations, they have some really good ones. There's
the Gary Demon House is pretty good.
Yeah, with the show that we watched on it was actually pretty decent. I will agree. There's a whole lot of, and the best stories are the ones that have a lot of controversy. And certainly that one has enough of it. I mean, and we talked about this because a sheriff, the night that happened, when the first incident with LaToya happened, they called us, a sheriff's department. The sheriff was really shook up, and this deputy called and says, hey, I'm looking for some advice. And he was part of the department that came in. And so, I'll tell you, I think everybody that lives in Indiana that's parapsychology groups may have got some connection to that. But anyway, getting back to the shows, Heather, what was the first one you ever saw? You're younger.
Well, if we really want to, I guess it'd be Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one. We all had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pay for the telephone. Now, this is a funny thing because we have the Cartoon Network, and I always tell everybody I pay for it for my grandkids. Now, hell no, I pay for it so I watch Scooby-Doo at midnight. You know?
Unexplained Mysteries.
Unexplained Mysteries. Okay. Mysteries of the Unknown?
No,
that's
one
different
with
show.
the-
Unexplained
Are you
Mysteries.
talking
Yeah, that's two
Unsolved Mysteries?
Unsolved
Unsolved. Okay,
Mysteries.
that
Robert
was
Stack.
it. Yeah,
Robert
Robert
Stack.
Stack. Yeah. God,
amazing
he did
show.
go in.
Every at least 2 or 3 stories on each show was
Yeah. Everybody always asks me
supernatural
what.
origin of some kind.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Still is.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
the new version on Netflix.
Now, who's got it now? I know for a while after Robert Stack's death, there was this one guy that picked it up. He was part of. He was director's son. He kept it for a while, and then I can't remember. I don't know who's got it now. Who's got it now? Do you know?
It's Netflix now, and I don't think that they actually have a host.
Okay.
There are voiceovers.
Yes.
But they don't have that facial presence. Robert Stack was just
Yeah, he was really
a
good.
master.
I mean, his voice, I think, helped make that show. Same as In Search of Leonard
of-
Nimoy's voice.
then-
It was Spock.
What
Yes.
was the one that William Shatner did?
Oh, he's done that. He's just done that in the last 10 years. It's
He did that before too.
Oh, did he? I don't remember the
I think he
name of
redid
it right off the top of my
He
head, but
brought it back.
I still watch it. For his age, he's pretty spry. You consider about everybody is dead. I don't think. Chekhov and Sulu are still alive.
William
I think, aren't
Shatner will never die.
they? No. That's a start. And I'm not necessarily per se a Trekkie, but if I were, I'm solely on the originals. I still watch them. There's 2 or 3 that I love, and that's the thing. I mean, I think a lot of them are gone now. Of course, Scotty. Oh my God, rest in peace. I mean, a true Scotsman, and you hate to see that go. I still watch them. Another show I watch. I'm just bringing this up as a side note. Is UFO. Anybody ever watch a 1960s show called UFO? Oh my God! The next Spirit Party will have to have that.
No, I was watching Doctor Who instead.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that watch Doctor Who watch UFO. I'll watch both.
I don't think it came out in my area.
Oh, that could be. I mean, But anyway,
Do you have a moment for me to digress?
Yes, please.
I
That's
have
what
a
this show's
Sulu
about.
story.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So I lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, and I was enjoying a solo meal at Marie Callender's like I did from time to time. I was sitting in a booth, and I heard this voice behind me talking to another person. I'm like, I know this voice. And I turned around,
I know that voice.
and guess who it was? George Takei. It was Sulu himself.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I wanted to geek out so badly, but I also wanted him to enjoy his meal. He was my favorite.
I tell you, I've got one. It's not nearly that cool, but I mean, he probably thinks he's cool. But yeah, actually, I ran into a porn star one time at a restaurant. He was Ed Adams, our retired co-founder's favorite guy, and oh my God, he was something. I mean, he was really nice. He really was. He was really nice, and it's funny because I went to go shake his hand. And he goes, "It's okay, I washed it," and I thought, "Oh my God!" And we're not. I won't bring it up, but anyway, it was just funny. He was real good about things. But yeah, I mean, I think most people cut their teeth on that. Now, I cut mine on a show called Most Haunted. And Most Haunted started on the BBC. Now, the BBC, I didn't have the BBC network. And I hadn't been to England yet. This is before all that. So, essentially, what happened is I found this on late night TV. And it had Karen O'Keefe, who was a British PhD parapsychologist. So, I mean, and they had a psychic that traveled around with them, and Derek Cora. And oh my God, I watched the hell out of that, And then somewhere after I came out of the service, I found Taps, and it was kind of neat. I remember when they first started out, they had this intro that the Roto-Rooter van, and all of a sudden changed into a Taps van. And what they'd done is they bought a couple of Roto-Rooter vans and painted them. I have to laugh because I lived in Greenwood at the time. I was coming out and I got behind a Roto-Rooter van. It had this bumper sticker that says, "No, this is not Jason nor Grant." And, I thought that was funny as hell when I
would
saw
love
it.
to see that.
Yeah, I mean, but I think everybody started in the industry somewhere else. When I was young, I was reading Hans Hostler books. I own a large collection of them. I think the world of them.
Maybe it was his TV special, The Search for Houdini, that I saw him originally.
Okay. Now that, yeah. I don't remember. I remember the name. I don't remember if I saw it or not.
The new one is not the same.
The great thing was my dad encouraged my study in all this. So he is my reason I'm where I'm at. And, he was into all those shows. So he would tell my mother, go watch TV in the bedroom. We'd sit down and watch where we wanted to watch. And so, I mean,
Yeah, the new one is called The Unexplained.
The Unexplained, that's it. I've watched some of them. And,
Yeah, we've watched some.
Yeah, we watched them. And, I mean, I tell you what, William Shatner is still William Shatner. The best one, I'll tell you, on William Shatner is the Gates episode where he does, what is that? He goes back, it's part of his show, Expedition Unknown, and do a special one, and they actually have William Shatner in it, and oh my God, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, it was.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was about, but my God, you want to watch it. Josh Gates is in there, and he's in all. Get to be near. I would be the same way near Captain Kirk. And oh my God, at one point he's in a plane, and you see Josh outside the plane window knocking. He just lowers the shade. He goes, fans, and but it's a good show. Look through there and you'll find it. I can't remember what they were investigating, but it's fantastic. I mean, it really, really was.
More recently, he did The Masked Singer on Fox.
Was he one of the singers?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he was eliminated in the first episode, so he's proven he's no Leonard Nimoy on the mic, but
yeah, Leonard
okay.
Nimoy could actually sing. A lot of people didn't realize that.
He belted out Proud Mary.
Oh, yeah, well, he
Wow.
a lot of people didn't know this, but Leonard Nimoy did Broadway for a while. When you're starving, it's like I told people, one of the best interviews I ever saw was on a very late night TV show back in the 70s. Was the guy that played Gunsmoke. He played the Matt Dillon. He played, what was his name? The actor. I'm trying to think, and my mind just left me. I got to drink more scotch. Anyway, but, he played The Thing in the 1940 movie The Thing. Okay, now The Thing has several different episodes, and we do a family thing over here we call the B-Night B-Real movie, and we go through some of these. If you never watched it, I don't care what anybody tells you, kids, this is not a stupid old black and white movie. This is hilarious. And the best one is, if you've ever been in the service, is this colonel who, in the first part of the show, people are reporting to him. And they're in the Antarctic. You can tell this son of a gun has never been in the Antarctic. And everybody comes through, he goes, shut the damn door! And, and everybody comes in, there's like 15 people come in during this briefing, and every one of them screams, shut the damn door. So the guy that's going out, who's in charge of the expedition, says, don't worry, I'll do the best I can, sir, and I'll shut the damn door on the way out. And, because it's ungodly cold. But actually, Matt Dillon, the guy that played Matt Dillon, he actually that was one of his first acting experiences. He got to play the monster. And they were interviewing me. They said, why would you take that role? He said, well, let me tell you. He said, it was like 5 years before Gunsmoke. He said, and he said, it had no line.
James Arness.
James Arness. That's it. Thank you. My wife made a quick run through. Eric and Heather have both been using their phones to run through and help me find things to aid my memory under drunken, stupor. But anyway, yeah, James Arness, he said, that was a long time before I had steady work. And he said, it was a great part. He said, the bad thing was you had to wear this rubber suit. And he said, basically, it was a dive suit they painted. And he said, it was ungodly uncomfortable. It scraped the hair off your legs. It was hot. But he said, it had no lines. All I do is, he said, I didn't really have to do that. They brought in and soundtracked all the sound. He said, and you know what? It allowed me to do two things. It allowed me to eat and live indoors. And I said, yeah, it's incredible. I mean, people ask me what I did when I was a fire chief. I said, I did a lot of things. How do you think I got to be an expert? I got to be a mixologist because I needed work. When you're a fireman, it's a great career. It's a rewarding career. I tell you what, I got a stepson who is aiming that direction, and I'm so proud of him. But, I'll tell you what. It doesn't pay well in the beginning. So you do other things. I had a minor in agronomy in college, so I did lawn and turf specialist. I worked at golf courses growing up. I did that. I went to school and got my mixology. I did professional bartending, but not only that, I taught people to be bartenders and manage bars. You did all kinds of things on the side. So, you get to the point that you realize that all this is going on, and I'll be honest with you, it's a little bit overwhelming when you have to think about all the life experiences you put into it. But anyway, we all had a basis to start out with, and certainly, mine was that and then tap. So I came up through the ranks the same way everybody else did. So, as we start to wrap up this episode, several things I want to say is that, when it comes right down to it, parapsychology is I paid $22 for that bet. It's an inside joke, folks. You'll never get that. But anyway, everybody knows as we do our tapings, we have Zara, our family dog down here, and I paid this big price for a very special pink bed for her, and she won't lay in it for no amount of money. Okay, so anyway, as we wrap this up, thoughts on parapsychology, paranormal. Eric, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing specifically to add, but I think it was good to be able to see the symbiosis between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm noticing a lot of the paranormal type television now is embracing that model. And
yes.
I find it fascinating because viewers actually get to see what both sides are like.
And Heather, what would you like to add?
I don't have anything right now.
Okay, that's all right. So, all right, before we move on, and our sources will be cited in the listing. So, before we move on, though, Eric, would you like to tell us about our next week's episode?
I am absolutely excited and delighted. We are going to learn about Black Moon Manor. And for those who are not familiar with it, it was a family farmstead in Greenfield, Indiana, which is on the east side or southeast side of Indianapolis. A very long, very interesting history.
Good.
I'm not going to give away too much, but there is a rumor that there may have been a smallpox hospital with a list of 200 people who passed away in this hospital.
Wow.
So stay tuned. You're in for a treat. You cannot miss it.
All right.
Sounds good.
For Halloween, our episode for October 30th, we have a special presentation dealing with the ghost of the Indianapolis State Fairgrounds Coliseum. And we'll talk about the Coliseum explosion that created these. And hopefully we'll have some eyewitnesses. So, folks, this is conclusion for tonight's episode, Ghost to Ghost. We hope you enjoyed this evening's episode. The episode Ghost to Ghost, written by myself, is now time for our ghost story of the day. And as we lead into that, please enjoy. Thanks for listening to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air, or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.